Okay, here we go. All right. Woohoo! Episode 30 of the Georgie and Patty Show. I am Georgie.
I'm Patty.
And today is Tuesday, which means we are on the episode of I Read It, So You Don't Have to. And today we're going to be talking about Patty's book that changed her life, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So with that, my quote of the day is going to come from Steven Covey as well. And the quote is, "You can't change the fruit without changing the root." I think that's such a good quote and so relevant to pretty much everything I think we talk about here on our show on most days, really, about, you know, who are we? Who do we want to be? Are we looking at ourselves? What kind of fruit are we bearing? You know, if we want some different fruit, then we might have to change our roots. So I love this. I know you have a very full slide deck, so I'm not even going to babble very much this morning. I think we need to just get into it because I love books, but your question of the day, though, is going to be, tell us what book changed your life. And you can put that in the chat, and I'm also going to post it in the Comfy Office over on Facebook. So if you haven't joined our Comfy Office, please join our Comfy Office. And I did have that copied and pasted, and then I realized I just copied and pasted something else.
I've got it.
Yay! So Patty's going to put the link to the Comfy Office. There it is in Facebook, if you or in the chat. So if you haven't joined our Facebook office, Comfy Spot, please do. And with that, let's get this party started.
All right. It is a party.
This is a party.
Okay. Oh, there's my green bar of happiness there, which is great. Zoom puts a green bar around, or a green rectangle around you, the screen that you're sharing, so you know that it's working. So, as Georgie mentioned, today is episode 1 of our new feature, We Read It So That You Don't Have to. This name actually comes from a presentation I gave a few years ago where I was talking about a book and encouraging everybody in the room to read it. And someone spoke up and says, no, I love it, Patty, when you talk about books. You read it, so I don't have to. And I'm like, okay. So that's the genesis of the name. However, here's our permission slip. Read the book or not, up to you. So I'm going to share some insight from my own perspective and what I got out of the book. And one of the things Georgie and I talked about when we came up with this idea of doing the I Read It So That You Don't Have to kind of thing, or even just talking about books to review in general, is how do you choose between all of the zillions of books that you've read, and which ones do you share? And do you share books that you know would rather kind of criticize rather than say, yay, that's awesome? And the decision I arrived at for myself is that if I were to review books or talk about books, I am only going to talk about books that I would rate as a 4-star or a 5-star kind of a book. I wouldn't review or talk about books that I felt were like a 3 or under, and I would certainly never take a book and criticize it. Okay, that's not true. I probably would. We'll talk more about shortcuts during this presentation. But assuming that the author has actually put in an effort to write a book, it's a big deal to write a book. So we really want to talk about books that we really like, and I just kind of look at it as like, okay, if I don't really like a book or don't get a lot of book out of, or a lot of value out of a book, doesn't mean it's a bad book, just mean it's not a good fit for me. So what I'm going to share through the course of this feature on these shows is the books that I believe are like a 4-star or 5-star. This book, today's book, is definitely a 5-star, big time 5-star, changed my life kind of book. I still have the original copy of it right here. The pages are all yellowed. I bought this book in 1997. This is a picture of me back in 1997, and you see my totally messy desk. One of the 7 habits of highly effective people is not about being neat. So the messy desk, I went shopping for that desk at one of those kind of business office places. And while I was there in the store, it was like Office Depot or Office Staples or something. I can't even remember the name of the store. One of those stores. And I'm looking for the desk, and they have this row of books. And I just happened to walk past the row of books, and I saw this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm like, I wonder if that can help me with this business that I'm about to start. And I bought the book, and that book changed my life. I will never forget that rack of books. I will never forget standing in front of it and on impulse picking up this book. I didn't realize what I had gotten into when I picked up the book, but it was life changing from day one. Because prior to that, this is me, 1997, 31 years old, and I had never ever been introduced to the idea of personal development. And this book is the first, and maybe that's why I love it so much. I think there's more to it than that, but this was the very first time that I'd ever seen this idea of personal development. This was a thing. I'm reading it, and he's talking about this is 25 years of his life's work in organizations and studying something called success literature. And I'm like, I had no idea this was a thing. And I looked at the publication date after I read the book, and 1998. Yeah, 1989. I'm like, this book has been around for nearly 10 years. This information has been around in nearly 10 years, and I did not, I just had this wish that I had come across this earlier in my life. It was just so profoundly life-changing, and just interesting for me that nobody in my personal world, my family, my friends, the people that I've been working with, like nobody was into this stuff. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't a thing. And it's just like this book just opened my eyes to so many things. So this is the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and there's so much about this book I want to share. And as I was reviewing it for this presentation, I'm thinking, wow, there's so much that he says in this book um, that Georgie and I have incorporated into this business that we're doing together, that I've incorporated into my work, that has become part of how I see the world. And a big piece of it comes from the idea that he brought forward in the book about the difference between making changes based on your character, based on principles, based on values, versus what he calls the personality um, route, which is about quick fixes and techniques and trying to get people to do things and manipulation versus the idea of developing a good character based on things like being honest, having integrity, fairness, dignity, quality and excellence, potential, growth, that, focusing on those things and actually becoming a better person and getting better results because you're a better person, versus how do I get people to like me? How do I say things in a way that they will buy? How do I coerce people to do what I want them to do? And he kind of drew this picture of, we have a choice in terms of how we want to develop, and the focus on becoming a better person. And really what this comes down to is the difference between doing the hard work to get something or looking for the constant quick fix or the easy button. And this is something that Georgie and I talk about so much about business. Everybody and their dog is out there selling a shortcut, a quick fix. Here's how you can succeed overnight, make tons of money, get your book to be an Amazon bestseller. There's so many shortcuts. If you look at books with a number in them that sold a lot of copies, you've got the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People versus the 4-hour work week, which is really about this idea of hacks. I can hack my way into life. I can hack my way through business. I can look for these shortcuts that are going to get me this result without actually doing the work. And there's an emptiness that comes from that. I remember reading Tim Ferriss's book about 4 Hour Work Week, where he hacked his way into winning a martial arts competition through a loophole. So while other people had spent years and years and years training and becoming good at this, he found a loophole that allowed him to win. And I remember reading that and thinking, wow, what an empty win that would be, because it doesn't mean anything. And it's a little bit like, paying your way onto a bestseller list. Um, when I used to teach network administration, um, part of the program was to do a Microsoft certification called the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. And you had to take these exams through Microsoft. And there were websites on the internet that were dedicated to sharing the test answers. So you could learn how to do the stuff, challenge the exam, and kind of know what you were doing. Or you could find these sites, study the answers, and pass the exam without actually knowing how to do the work. And which led to this kind of terminology in the industry. It's like, oh, paper MCSEs, where the piece of paper didn't mean a damn thing because people didn't know anything about what they were doing, but they just managed to hack their way into passing the test. And in some cases, managed to use that to get themselves into a job. But this idea of showing up, like I can't imagine what it would be like to show up on day one of the job with your fancy piece of paper that says you should be able to do a huge amount of technical skills, have the knowledge and the experience to be able to do the work, and to be absolutely unable to do it. I don't understand the appeal to to that. But this is kind of the thing that Stephen Covey talks about in this book, is about that there is a level of personal fulfillment that comes from um, doing the work, putting the work in. Um, and so much of it makes me sad, actually. When I look at this, it makes me sad. So much of his work has become kind of the standard of how we do things. A lot of the concepts that he talks about in this book have been widely adopted, and along with that, also wildly made fun of. Buzzword bingo, if you look at one of those buzzword bingo cards, it is littered with Stephen Covey kind of stuff, like this idea of change beginning with shifting what he calls your paradigm, which is really, it's the way you see the world. It's how you see the world. It's how you understand the world. And that view is clouded by your own beliefs and by your lack of knowledge. And that by seeing things differently, by learning new things, how you see the world changes. And when that happens, everything follows for that change. So basically, if you want to make a big change, a big meaningful change in your life or in your business, you really need to change how you see things. You need to change your paradigm, change the information that you're coming from. In some cases, changing your beliefs, that kind of thing. So in terms of habits, Stephen Covey says that habits come at the intersection of knowledge, knowing, you know, knowing different information, knowing what you need to do, the skills to do it, and the desire to want to do it. That's the beginning of having these kind of habits, having these habits for personal success. And he talks about the maturity continuum, where we go from being dependent, like as little kids, we're dependent on our parents to look after us and to keep us safe and to feed us and to get us to do what we're supposed to do. If you caught the video we shared yesterday, but that's the job of the parent to do that. And then we are supposed to reach this stage where we are independent and able to look after ourselves. And then from there, there's this idea of interdependence, and it's where as independent beings we come together with other independent beings, and we depend on each other and we collaborate with each other, and that this is how we have good productive relationships and partnerships and a life with other people, where we maintain our independence and we also depend on others, but having a mature attitude towards that, where we're not dependent we don't make our life about somebody else and dependent on them for our happiness or things like that. So the whole thing his 7 habits are based on this maturity continuum. And the first 3 habits are all about gaining that independence, becoming a really strong person yourself, being able to lead and manage yourself before you're in a position to lead and manage other people. So the first habit, and this was the one where the lights went on for me. It's like, wow, proactive. I can actually make a change in my life. Like, just this idea that we can choose the way that we want to show up, and that there is a space between stimulus and response. We're not victims of our situation. Other people don't make us do stuff. Um, they might do something, and we may have this response show up for us, and we may want to react in a certain way, but we have a moment where we can stop and take a breath, and we can find that gap between what happens and how we respond to it, that we are not just programmed to do things, and that other people can't make us do things. And I still remember the, the couch I was sitting on when I read this, and it was like, oh, I can make changes. I don't have to be this way. The difference between I have to do something versus I choose to do something, and that we have choices, and that we have so many more choices than we might see. Certainly, I had more choices than I saw at the time. But the first habit is to recognize that you can do that you can be proactive, and that you can change. Um, you can change. The second piece of this, in terms of that proactive, is once you realize that you have the choice and you have the power and you can decide, is to figure out where you want to go. And he's quite literal about his habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. And he starts the chapter with a visualization of at your funeral. What do you want people to say about you? And I don't know how many workshops I've been part of where they do an exercise like this to have you visualize your funeral as kind of um, a dark way to do this. And I've been in workshops where they've done this. Sometimes they say your retirement party, at the end of your career. Um, on your 80th birthday party or something like that. It's like, what do you want people to say about you? What impact do you want to make on the world? How would you like to hear people talk about you? If they were to stand up and make a speech about you and to say something about how you were as a person and the impact that you had on them, what would you like that to be? And to begin with that in mind, and then to build your life around that. It's the other thing I really love about what he does, is he takes this like longer view that's not quick fix. But when you look, like when we were talking to Terrell in the interview, this idea of looking at the whole canvas of your whole life, and it's like, okay, where is this going? And it's about, how do I want to be seen as a person? It's not necessarily about career goals or the amount of money that you make or anything like that. It's more about, what kind of a person was I? What kind of an impact did I have? What kind of difference did I make in the world? And to start from that in terms of how you want to move forward. And he talks about these kinds of things: visualizing, having a personal mission statement. Like, when you look at, okay, this is how I want to be, writing that down. How am I going to show up every day so that people say those things about me? How will that impact my choice? And to read that over every day, to have those affirmations that, yes, I am this is the person that I am, and this is how I want my life to be. And of course, you can apply. But this is the part that kind of confused me about the book. I thought it was a business book, but it was all about you as a person. It's like, um, because that's where the change is. If you want a better business, you need to be a better person. Is kind of where he's coming from. And as much as he's a leadership consultant and trainer, and that's where his career was centered, the real work happens at the human being level. Um, in this too, the difference between leadership and management, and you know Management is about climbing the ladder of success. It's about doing the right things in order to move up, to make progress. Whereas leadership is making sure that the ladder is leaning against the right wall. Leadership is deciding where it is that you want to go. Um, and management is about getting done what needs to get done in order to achieve whatever you accomplish. And that these are two different things. Like, there's a difference between leadership and management, and this is huge. Is leadership is more about the vision and where do you want to go, um, and the management is more about getting it done. So in terms of the first three habits, working on yourself, this idea of beginning with the end in mind is a personal leadership kind of a decision. It's like, where are we going? Where am I going as a person? And then the third habit, which is to put first things first, is personal management. This is getting yourself to do the stuff that you need to do in order to achieve the goals that you set in habit number 2. What do you need to do in order to become that person you want to become, in order to run that business that you want to create? And this means finding that distinction between what's urgent and what's important. Um, and his quadrant here, we talked about this in a previous episode here, of this breaking down all of the things that you need to do into these 4 quadrants. Is it urgent or not urgent? Is it important or not important? And by focusing on what he calls quadrant 2, urgent, not urgent, and important, that's where the change happens. And as he says, um, we start off in this position where there's a lot of urgent and important things in our lives, and this is the putting out fires kind of situation. Um, Things are urgent and important, but by working on quadrant 2, you reduce the urgency factor. You put things into place that stops the fires from burning in the first place. This is the idea of, if you want different fruit, change the roots kind of thing. And he, he's honest about, it takes work, and it takes a concerted effort to focus on quadrant 2, because the place you get quadrant 2 time from is quadrant 3 and 4, the not important things. And that often disappoints people, because things that are not important and are urgent are often urgent because somebody else wants you to do something. So there's this element of being able to say no, and to be able to say no in a way that is respectful of both you and the other person, but needing to carve out that time in order to do that important but not urgent work that makes everything better. And so the first 3 are about working on you. This is the independence piece of it. The next 3 habits are about working with other people. How do you have better relationships? And the first one is about thinking win-win. And this is, as I was looking at this stuff, I'm like, this is everything that Georgie and I build into the stuff that we do with our clients, our focus on business, everything. And it begins with this idea of win-win in any kind of a negotiation or transaction, is thinking about how can this be of mutual benefit. Uh, in terms of business, it's like when you enter into an engagement with a client, is that person going to get value from they get value from your work, and you get money. Like, that's the relationship. And there's even more involved in that in terms of win-win, but it is of mutual benefit, compared to this idea of convincing and converting and persuading, which is very much about win-lose. It's like, I win, I get the business, I get the money. Whether or not you get results, I don't care. That's your problem. Very, a lot of the advice that we see is very much based on that win-lose kind of a situation, where it's like, I don't care about the other person. All I care about is me. Does this work for me? And thinking win-win requires an abundance mentality. It requires recognizing that there is enough to go around. And if this particular client isn't going to benefit from the work that you do, that they are somebody else's client, and that another client is there out there waiting for you, your future client, to show up and to get the true benefit out of working with you. You don't have to convince everyone to work with you. You want to have this idea of mutual benefit. And this is a passage that I want to read actually out of the book, when it comes to win-win, is that maturity is the balance between courage and consideration. And the longer quote here is the definition of emotional maturity: the ability to express one's own feelings and convictions, balanced with consideration for the thoughts and feelings of others. Can you imagine a world where we all had that level of emotional maturity, where we can speak our truth and at the same time be respectful and considerate of others? And basically, this is what's required in order to have uh, a win-win situation. Because if you look at the degree of courage and consideration, a large amount of consideration and a small amount of courage results in lose-win. And for those of us who are very heart-centered in our work, or purpose-driven, we care about other people, sometimes we enter into lose-win situations thinking it's win-win because we're so focused on the other person winning and getting something out of it that we don't look after our own interests. So win-win requires that balance, that yes, you're going to get a lot of benefit out of this relationship. However, I am too. We both need to win. This comes in, with things like setting your fees, the amount of access that you give people, the amount of effort that you put into a transaction, and how you set up your services and your business. So to look at this, how do I do this in this place where it's win-win? They win and I win. And of course, when you have a high degree of that kind of personal courage, looking out for yourself, and a low amount of consideration, well, this is what's super popular in our society, is all about I'm going to win and I don't care who else loses. And a lot of business advice, a lot of sales advice is really based on this idea of win-lose. And they sometimes label it win-win to make it sound good, but the reality is it's very much based in the I'm going to win and they're going to lose. Um, and the win for them is often in terms of justifications. Um, heard one the other day, this idea that it's okay to do anything in order to get the sale, because until you get the sale, that other person can't experience your transformation. And that is based on this idea that you know better than they are, and that somehow they can experience transformation simply by giving you a lot of money, without being fully invested, or going into the relationship eyes wide open kind of a thing. So we see a lot of this, is you know the courage over consideration, or consideration over courage. But what we're after here for true win-win is the balance. Habit number 5, seek first to understand, then be understood. This, my friends, is marketing. This is marketing. This is the idea of being client-centered. This is everything that we talk about. And if your messaging is not working, this is where to look. People are not going to buy from you unless they know that you understand the situation that they're in. Our whole assessment methodology that we use is all based on this. It is based on understanding their situation, having them understand their situation. It's based on listening to what they're asking for, listening to where they're coming from, seeing the world from their perspective, having empathy, truly understanding where they're at, how they feel about it, and diagnosing what's going on before making any kind of a prescription. This is everything. Um, and when you do this, and when you do this well, and when you truly understand where the other party is coming from, then you can move towards being understood. And that's part of what we do in our assessment. We build a bridge. We understand where they're at, and they understand what they're at, and they know that we understand them, and they feel understood, and that puts them in a place where they're receptive to hearing what you have to say. And then using the information that you've gathered from them, you can explain what you do in a way that makes sense to them. This is about really good, strong communication. And this is what makes sales and marketing work. And most people, especially when they're starting out, they want to be understood. All of the questions that we get always, how do I explain what I do so that people will buy? How do I show up as different from my competition? How do I show that I'm better? It's all very focused on how do we be understood? How do I get this across to people? How do I explain my value? All of these questions, you're starting in the wrong place. Seek first to understand, then be understood. It will change everything in terms of your sales and marketing. It'll change everything in terms of relationships. Figuring out, if you're in some kind of a confrontation, figure out where is the other party at first. Focus on them first. Truly understand where they're coming from. It's like when you get to that place where you can both, you don't have to agree with their position, but understand what it is. And when you get to that place and they feel heard and understood, then they're open and willing to listen to what you have to say. Habit number 6, another buzzword bingo one, but really powerful, this idea of synergizing, of coming together in a partnership, putting two brains together, putting two ideas together, and looking for creating something that's better, where the whole is better than the sum of the parts. I like to think that this is what Georgie and I have in our program, is we have this synergy. Independently, we're both really good at what we do. Together, when we work together with clients, we are so much better. Georgie makes me a better person. Just by working with Georgie, she makes me a better person. I learn from her every day. Um, and together, when we work with clients, bringing both of our perspectives, both of our skills and knowledge and experience together, we have created something that I would never have been able to create on my own. And I'd like to think that Georgie wouldn't be able to create on her own. It's that we've come together to build this thing. And that's the idea of synergy. And when you can bring two people or two businesses or two ideas together where each one is strong on their own and not dependent on the other, because that's not synergy. Being dependent on somebody, um, riding somebody's coattails kind of thing isn't synergy. Synergy is when you both bring value to the equation. You both independent can stand on your own, and together you can create something better. um, this is true of any good relationship. uh, you bring together uh, a couple of people, a couple of colleagues, however you want to put it, and together you're better than you are apart, but you're not dependent on the other person. There's also the other place to look for synergy is in seeking a third alternative. Um, this is just like a great idea when you have kind of opposing ideas that they want one thing and you want something else, and they seem like they're totally in conflict, and it's either or. And it's this ability to step back and say, okay, why do you want the thing that you want? Why do I want the thing that I want? What are the elements that are important? Isolating those and then asking the question, what is a third way we haven't thought about that meets both of our needs? This is, um, rather than uh, compromising, where you each give up something that you want in order to make the other one happy. This is about how can we both get everything that we want. Let's get creative here. And it's like, okay, you want these elements of a vacation, I want those other elements of vacation. Where you want to go is, you want to go and stay on this private island where there's no other people so that you can be alone and be in the sunshine. And I want to do something where I get to go and view museums and learn something. And it's like the private island doesn't have any of those, and the city I want to go to doesn't have any of the things that you want. Is there a location that we can go to that provides both? And then we can have a holiday that we both like, rather than one of us having to give up what we want. Um, so there's this idea of looking for the third alternative rather than getting locked in to each other's sides. And the 7th habit is all about sharpening the saw. based on this, the perspective that, if you have 6 hours to cut down a really big tree, it'd be really smart to sharpen the saw first. You're better off to take the time to do that, because you'll be more effective in the long run. And in terms of this is about things like self-care, something that we really need to pay attention to in our businesses. It's like, we are the saw. How do we keep ourselves sharp? And how do we get that rest and reflection and renewal and replenishment that we need in order to be good at what we do? So how do we take care of ourselves? And also this idea of continually learning, getting better at what we do, continuing to improve, so that we are a well-running and also very sharp saw. So those are, that's an overview of what the 7 habits are, kind of this uh, big takeaways from the book. And there's more. But one of the things about this particular book is the fact that it was written so long ago. That was a period of time where books had substance. And I think this is the thing about this book, is there's so much in it. So many ideas brought together, organized, the examples, the diagrams, like the models and things like that are brought into this book. It's a 25 years worth of research and work and experience into a very carefully crafted book that is just so full of helpful, useful, applicable information that we rarely see this anymore. The latest kind of trend in business and personal development books is more of the single idea. Sometimes I read a business book and I'm like, okay, this book could be a blog post. There's no there. They've taken one simple idea that they could tweet or write in a paragraph, and they've tried to turn it into a whole book. There's a lot of padding and a lot of blah blah. Whereas this is, there are so many ideas in this book that could become books of their own. And in fact, the first things first, one of the 7 habits, Stephen Covey wrote a whole book on first things first and setting priorities. So there's a ton to take away from this book. And I think this is one of the things I like about it the best. And if there's a single takeaway from the whole book that has changed my life, it is this one. Early on in the book, well, first of all, it's a lovely description of, using instructional design principles to write a book too. Talks about the benefits of reading it and how you'll get self-confidence and how you'll create better relationships. Gives you reason to read it, but also some tips for how to get the best out of the book. And one of the little pieces of advice, and this is just, it's the one paragraph in the entire huge book of wisdom. There's this one paragraph that says, you will get more out of this book if you read it with the intention of teaching it to somebody else. And I took that one little, like, of all of the things that I've actioned, it has been that thing, is reading with the intention of teaching to somebody else. And it's like, if you do that, you're going to have a deeper understanding. You're going to pay more attention to the material. You're going to get more out of it. It's like, read this stuff with the intention of going and teaching it to someone else. And I drove my friends and family nuts by teaching them the stuff in this book. The numbers of times I drew out that time management matrix and I talked to people about what it meant to be proactive and the definition of synergy. I gave speeches at Toastmasters about this book. I joined Toastmasters because of this book. But my entire business, right now, I am doing this. Georgie and I do this every day, Monday through Friday. We are teaching the stuff that we have learned. When I wrote my own book, that was the biggest benefit I got from doing it, is that I took all of the work that I had been doing and I attempted to teach it through the pages of the book. And I got better at my own work because I was pulling it together into a book. So this is like the biggest, most life-changingest thing I took away from this book. And for everyone else who's in a business, in terms of transformation, in terms of expertise, this is a brilliant way to approach your content marketing, to teach people what you know. Put that information out there. It's helpful and it's useful. It shows your expertise, but it's also a service. That this is, this is what we base our business around. This is what we teach our people. Um, uh, Blogging, creating videos, sharing on social media. You can do fluffy shit for clicks, or you can actually provide some really good, in-depth little bits of expertise and knowledge. And as you do this, you'll realize too how much you actually know when you start sharing all of the things that, when you start teaching people. Um, you'll uncover tons and tons of stuff that that is valuable to other people. So there it is, the 7 habits of highly effective people in 45 minutes or 40 minutes or whatever. As I was putting this together, I'm like, I could teach this course for a week. Like, there's so much here, so much here. I cannot recommend a book higher than I recommend this one.
I was like, I lost you. Hey, there you are. Just whispering.
Oh, I'm still here.
So good. So good. Oh my God. I almost want to make, they talk about the tweetables or whatever. I love that. You can do fluffy shit for clicks, or you can actually post knowledge. That's awesome.
You know what's really, really awesome? Is that you can do this teach what you know thing right from the very beginning. It's like you don't have to have completed all of the courses. It's like if somebody, like for example, if somebody was taking a life coaching course with the intention of becoming a life coach at the end of the course, the number one best thing that they could do for their future business and for their learning and their certification would be to begin blogging and teaching about what they're learning in life coaching. They would learn the material better. They would be useful and helpful as they shared the information, and they would start building an audience. And then when it was time for them to open their doors and say, hey, I'm a life coach now, they would already have the beginnings of a body of work. And they would get better. And it's just sharing your progress as you go along. A fellow named Austin Kleon wrote a book called Show Your Work. And he's an artist, and he's just like, you want to sell artwork? Show how you do it. Show your work in progress. And we can apply that to any business that we're in, especially if we're in the beginning and just learning things ourselves. We can start sharing that. You develop that expertise faster. So it works on so many levels.
So true. So true. Lots of good comments in the chat. Yeah, I can relate to everything you're saying. Greatly impacted by this book also. Really good to be reminded of all of these things you're describing, and you're doing an awesome job of describing them. Yes, you did a fantastic job. This is helping to inspire me to do the same. Teach what you know. I'm working on it. It's where I'm headed, hopefully. Super excited to get my copy. Amazing. Yeah, I think that's such a good point you made too about, it's perfectly fine and actually will help you integrate the information you're learning if you do start sharing it with people and, teaching people the things that you're learning. It goes in so much faster. And I think at a deeper level.
Absolutely.
Like you hear it differently. I was listening to a YouTube thing the other day, and this guy was saying, this guy's like, oh yeah, no, I hear it. And he's like, you hear it at a sensory level, but you don't hear it at a deep level. And I think this is what happens when we share information and we teach what we're learning, is that you get that deep learning of something, and then it becomes part of you. It becomes easier, and you really get that integration instead of just hearing stuff.
Exactly.
And that's what I love. I was actually talking to one of our clients yesterday who has been watching our show, and and she was saying, oh, I take something every day, but I also implement it. So this week, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking this piece and I'm applying it to my life. And I think that's such a great thing because it also gives you an example of what do I like? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? Why does this work for me? Why doesn't this work for me? Like it's that whole experimentation process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even with this book, you could take one habit a week. Oh, today I'm going to try, this week I'm trying this. Let me see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Be curious. What did I learn from it? What worked? What didn't? And we talk about creating our own models. Ooh, I can take this piece and put it here and do this, and maybe I'll integrate part of this and less of that. It's such a great thing to really create kind of your customized body of work that you bring into your own business for your own clients. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. Any questions, thoughts, comments from anybody? What was your favorite habit? Maybe going through, are there some that you're already implementing, some that you love, some that are more challenging than other? Super curious for those who've read it before, or even if you haven't, if it's the first time you've heard it, are there, because sometimes you may be implementing these things and not realize, oh, that's where this came from. 30 years ago, 25 years ago, you know, it's, I love this feature of your show. Yay, we're happy you do because we really love books.
It's like, oh, what books are we going to do next?
Yeah, exactly. It's so good. So good. That's for sure. Yeah, we're making the assumption that you love books, or at least reading and knowledge. First things first is really important, but can sometimes be really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, this is the thing, right? I'm looking through this, my yellowed copy of this book. The pages are all yellowed. And I'm remembering this. I'm like, as I'm going through this, I'm like, I still haven't mastered that. Still, I'm still running into, seek first to understand, right? And it's like, I'm still running, like I read that and I'm like, oh crap. I just had that situation last week. Like a situation where seek first to understand would have solved the issue. But this is the thing. It's a lifetime worth of practice to do this kind of stuff. It's what I love about this kind of work. It's really enduring. It's not easy. And we get, he talks about a virtuous upward spiral. We learn and we do, and we learn and we do, and we learn and we do. And it's just, it goes up, and it's just, and I find when I'm getting, in this place where I'm highly emotional and I just kind of forget, kind of lose it, get triggered, or however you want to say it. And it's just, I don't bring that stuff in. I think I know it. I think I do it. And then when I'm under pressure, I collapse and I forget it. And it's just recognizing, it's like, okay, that's what happened. I need to revisit that one. I need to work on that one a little bit more. And it's like, because I don't think you're ever done.
No.
Maybe Stephen Covey was done. I don't know. I read his books and I think, man, he's going to be like the perfect human being, But I don't think he would have said that, but he tried, right? Like he was putting the effort in and doing the research. And that's the other thing I loved about the book too, is that, he used a lot of personal examples from his life, and they weren't always the pretty perfect examples where he did things right. A lot of times they were, he talks about parenting, he talks about work situations, but he talks about cases where he didn't feel he did the best job as a parent, that kind of thing. There was humility was one of the principles that he listed as well. It's he's sharing the information. It wasn't about, look how great I am. It was more about, these are some things that I've learned and I'm going to share them with you.
Totally. Sharpen the saw. So smart. Yes, that's a good
Absolutely.
One. Do you incorporate the book's concepts into the system you use to work with clients?
I'm not going to say that we built the system around this, but when I look at this and I look at the system, oh, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From the thinking win-win in terms of like just the system as far as sales and marketing
Yeah.
is absolutely based on win-win and based on fit. It's you work with clients that are going to get value out of working with you. It's a good exchange of value. It's not about winning at all costs. It's seek first to understand is everything
It
in
is.
marketing, like
And
absolutely
communication
everything.
with people. Like,
Communication with people.
it's literally class tomorrow, done.
Yeah. Well, and it's the
It's,
it's about the fact that you get to choose too, and you get to be proactive. It's like this about this idea of this U-shaped business.
yes.
It's you bring your
Yeah.
own your skills and your values and your experience and what you want to do, and it's like you start there. What kind of business do you want? Um, so yeah, this stuff is absolutely baked in.
It's just woven all throughout it. When I think about the work we do, the systems we built, it's all in there. Like I say, we certainly didn't go, hey, that book, we should put those things in. It is,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it just is.
it
It's even,
just,
even things like, the levels, like where he talks about, um, if there's a scale of 1 to 10 and what you're going to do, and you're at a level 2, your next step is level 3. And the first step is admitting ignorance, um, so that you can learn to do step 3. Yes, you got your eye on 10, but you need to build that foundation. You can't just zip from level 2 to level 10. You can get the certificate. You can buy likes. You can buy an email list. You can buy your way onto a stage or onto a bestseller list, but it doesn't it doesn't have that it doesn't have the foundation. It doesn't have the solidity behind it. And we're very much about that. It's like what level you're at, what do you do right now that's appropriate to the level that you're at in your business. Which
exactly.
is not sexy. This is not sexy
No,
compared to the promises made by others in our field. It is not sexy, but it's necessary. It's necessary. And as like if you're in a transformational business, if you're helping people become better, you know this because it's
exactly.
part of what you do.
So
And it's the
true.
same thing in business.
Yep. Let's see. Okay, good to have this reminder. Love the idea of building one habit per week to focus on. Oh, I would like a summary of the First Things First book also. By the way, I got to go to a government leadership retreat where Steven Covey's brother introduced us to all of the habits. It was really great, and personal stories illuminated everything really well. I love the comparison between management and leadership. I definitely find the wall to lean the ladder on. I love all the contents mentioned. I'm going to try one habit focus each week. The levels thing you introduced to me was extremely helpful. Amazing. Amazing. Such great content, great comments. As always, we love, the engagement and the feedback. It's so good. After yesterday's show, I took my weekly goal sheet and revamped it completely. It is much better now. I have included the word why next to each goal and added more space for action steps. I'm sure it will help me to reach my goals faster. Yeah, it feels good to continue to learn and make changes for the better. Thank you guys. So
Awesome.
welcome. So welcome.
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. So
That's why we're here.
that's why we're here. Exactly. And today's show is actually a really great lead in even to tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to dive a little more into how do we understand people? What are some things we can do to actually be able to practice that understanding, get into their world, have a little more empathy and compassion so that we can become better communicators, and have better relationships with our clients and future clients. So perfect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So as a reminder, if you haven't joined our comfy office hangout space place on Facebook, do that, because we're going to post some more questions in there and have more interaction in the comfy home office space. Yeah. Other than that.
Oh, and save the date for May 29th.
Oh, yeah.
Friday, May
Yeah.
29th, we're going to be doing a virtual online all-day workshop. Details to come. Just say save the date right now.
Yeah, save the date. Stay tuned. More info coming. So, perfect.
How many books do you read in a year?
Oh man.
I'm gonna say 50.
Yeah.
That's about one per week.
I was gonna say, yeah, easily one a week.
Yeah, I read
Yeah.
a crazy number of books. Yeah, lots.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I don't speed read. For me, I actually take a lot of notes when I'm reading. I really like to understand certain books. So yeah.
Yeah, I tend to I consume books like peanuts. I like it's kind of my version of binge watching TV or whatever. It's like I like to read, and I mess myself up. Is I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this really quickly because I just want to know what happens next. Like I want the whole thing, and then I'm like, oh, this is really good. I should go back and read it again. I rarely do.
I reread things, but yeah.
But I think partly it's like I've read so much that a lot of it is like, oh yeah, and it's just like I'm looking for something new to add to my mental model kind of thing.
Sure.
But yeah, I love the conceptual and the ideas. I really do fall short of action. It's part of this whole thing that Georgie and I are doing. It's like, okay, balancing the consumption of information in with putting some information out. How do I start sharing the stuff I already know versus just
exactly
bringing more stuff in?
Yeah.
Fiction
that's
too.
That's why we have the show. Yeah, that's why we have the show.
Yes.
Woohoo! So,
woo!
All right. Happy Tuesday.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow. Same time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
How do you know Georgie's got a 10:30 appointment?
That's right. I got a 10:30 call, so we will be done on time. That's right. I'm not keeping talking. I'm like, we're over, people. That's it. Tomorrow we can talk longer.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.